Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And we are so excited to have our friend here, Barry Carl, joining us today. He's amazing. He's a practitioner at SomaticJoy LLC, and really he has two separate practices. We'll get into that. Would you mind introducing yourself to us today, Barry, please?
Hi, folks. My name is Barry Carl. I am a somatic psychotherapist and a body worker and a few other things as well, but that's what we're concentrating on today. It's really great to be here with y'all.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what you do exactly. I know you're from the New York area, so I know we're dealing with some rain and icky weather these days, but you still seem like you're in a good mood, right?
I love weather. So much of the country is bone dry right now. I'm not going to complain about some rain here.
Oh, I know, right?
So
True, you're
yeah,
right. We
and
need it.
yeah, and it's beautiful. Anyway, I'm originally from Los Angeles.
Okay.
I came to New York a long time ago to go to school, and I stayed there. I decided that I liked having seasons. I came from a monoclimate where
Yeah.
it's like talk about the weather. Nope.
No.
How's today? Well, kind of same as yesterday. Perfect. Tomorrow's supposed to be the same. Anyway, so I'm a somatic psychotherapist. For those of you who aren't familiar with that term, somatic comes from the word soma, which is a Greek word for body.
Mm-hmm.
And somatic therapy actually gives the body a very important role in therapy. I mean, a lot of therapy, and when we think about it at least, is sitting and talking. Um, and that can be very valuable. I'm not here to knock any modality. That can be really helpful. Um, however, um, actually experiencing your feelings in your body in real time, as opposed to talking about them, is, I think, a more immediate and constructive way to deal with feelings. I mean, feelings are to the body what thoughts are to the mind.
Yeah.
And if we don't bring the feelings along, then whatever trauma we have stays stuck in the body.
Yeah.
And we can talk until we're blue in the face, and it's just stuck in there. The guy who's like the leading uh, contemporary authority on PTSD uh, talks about working with the body. In fact, uh, he's developed a series of exercises called TRE, trauma release exercises, that are wonderful for getting at some of the core musculature that holds trauma in the body. Um, Now, usually, when I talk about this work, I usually start from the standpoint of trauma because so many of my clients come in with trauma that has to be resolved before they can go on to um, opening to more pleasure in their lives. Now, I understand that pleasure is a kind of a loaded word. We're very oriented towards pleasure in our society. We sell everything with pleasure. I remember one night having a kind of a light bulb go off when I was watching TV, and I was channel surfing, and I happened upon this one commercial where there are these two women, um, and it looks like they're having an orgasm over a corn chip.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so good.
God, it's a
There's so much, right. Oh my gosh. There's so much yummy pleasure in that corn chip. You just got to have it.
mm-hmm.
Um, so we commercialize pleasure a lot, but we're not necessarily a pleasure positive society. There's a
Yeah.
lot of pain in the way we talk about it. It's like,
Yeah.
no pain, no gain.
Exactly.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Suck it up. Especially guys,
Yeah.
we're the ones who are supposed to suck it up. Um, so a lot of us never really get to pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of a neat segue into my body work um, as a somatic sex educator. Now, there's that word somatic again because it means working with the body. And pleasure plays a really important role in our lives,
Yeah.
but we tend to minimize it. We don't even notice very often when we're having pleasure, which comes in such a broad
Broad, so
spectrum.
many forms. Yep.
Right. I ask people, I said, well, what brings you pleasure? They say, well, I don't really know. Well, uh, how about morning coffee? Do you like that? Most people like, yeah, there you go.
I already had tea first, right? Like, there you go.
Uh-huh.
But I'm like, I
Right.
need some. Yeah, it gives me pleasure for sure. It
Right.
makes me
Just
look
this
forward to the
and
morning. Yes,
right.
yes.
And there are different levels to that as well. If you stop and think about it for a second, there's the smell. If you grind your
Mm.
own beans, that has a kind of a perfume to it. When you're making the coffee and standing there drumming your fingers on the tabletop, waiting for it to drip down, or whatever you do, uh, there's pleasure, there's anticipation, and then there's that first hit. That just, your whole body just goes sparkly a little
Hmm.
bit. But people get, they're so used to, I got to get that first cup down before I'm functional or don't talk to me. Um, so they don't notice that they transition into some gentle form of pleasure. Um, we get pleasure through all of our senses. We are equipped, we are uniquely equipped in all of creation to experience pleasure
Hmm.
through our bodies. We have so many varieties of sensors in our skin. There are nerves in our skin that only respond to slow, gentle touch.
Yep.
And a lot of us, we're touch averse.
Yep.
We're especially, oh my gosh, especially after COVID
Hmm.
or with COVID. Um, things like that we used to take for granted, giving a friend a hug,
Yep.
shaking hands,
Of course.
um, rubbing shoulders with people in a
Hmm.
tight environment,
Hmm.
um, being in groups, which incidentally we are also wired for,
Yep.
um, has become strained. So we are dealing now with a global population that's not getting enough touch.
Yep.
Touch um, stimulates certain very
Hormones,
positive chemicals in our body.
chemicals. Yep.
Right.
Hmm.
Oxytocin, endorphins, all of the feel good stuff we actually have within us. And one of the reasons that we're such an overprescribed population with antidepressants is because people are touch starved.
Yep.
So my work uh, as a body worker has a lot of different levels to it. Um, the since a lot of people are traumatized in our society, um, unfortunately, a preponderance, I think, of women are traumatized more so than men. Um,
Yeah.
but that doesn't. I don't want to leave any
No,
any
no, of course
group
not.
out here
Yeah.
because we all get that
We're
at
all
some point
inclusive.
in
Yep.
in our lives, and as I said before, we hold that trauma in our bodies. Now, the way that works, according to the guy who started body work, basically, a man named Wilhelm Reich, who was actually a PhD psychiatrist and worked with Freud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he wasn't really pleased with the results that he got
Hmm.
after having somebody on his couch every day, 5 days a week for 14 years,
Hmm.
where they could talk about their problems. They were very articulate, but they still had them.
Yep.
So he came up with this brilliant thesis that trauma the insults that we suffer at the hands of life, um, find a home in our bodies in the form of chronic low-level muscular contractions that we become so used to that we don't even notice them. They become part of our wallpaper.
Yeah.
But those contractions actually hold emotion. They hold the emotion of the original trauma, of the original insult. So the way to, or a way, certainly, to work through that, to become a more functioning, feeling, unblocked, creative, happier, juicier, more interesting person is to work directly with the places in the body that are traumatized. Now,
Yeah.
let me give you a little for instance.
Sure.
Um, let's say you're a little boy or a little girl, and you have a parent who isn't comfortable with your emotions. They have real limitations around your emotions. They want to see you happy or they don't want to see you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you get hurt or you're upset, uh, and that parent can't deal with it. And they see a tear kind of coming out of the corner of one eye, and they get in your face and they say, "Oh, you do that? I'll really give you something to cry about."
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean, this is an
yes, I know.
unfortunately common
Mm-hmm.
story. So what does that kid do? What does that kid do to avoid further punishment?
Mm.
What do you think they do? I'll tell you what they do. They start locking down pieces of their body, and it starts with the breathing,
Okay.
because when you breathe, you feel. The more you breathe, the more you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So the kid at this point is in an impossible situation. If he gives into his feelings, he's going to be punished.
Yeah.
Uh, so he's going to, or she is going to do everything they possibly can to
Yeah.
avoid
To,
showing feeling.
yeah.
So children, in their brilliance, go do a few things. First of all, if the breathing, if your breathing gets a little shuddery and you know that crying is the next thing on the menu. So you hold your breath. You hold your breath and you just hold it in for all your might. You lock your jaw because if your lip starts to tremble,
And yeah.
next thing is going to be tears. We don't want to show that. We're going to be punished. So we learn very young
Yeah.
exactly how
Wow.
to store that trauma in our bodies
Yeah.
by not letting it process through us.
So true. Yeah.
This is not a prison sentence, though,
Mm-hmm.
because it is possible. It's more than possible. It's quite probable uh, that your breathing capacity can be restored, that your throat can open back up. How many people say, "Well, when I get emotional, like I just choke
Yeah.
and my throat closes." Or I feel I get dizzy. I want to throw up.
Mm-hmm.
There's such a range of symptoms that people have that were put in place to
True.
protect them from their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of people walking around kind of disconnected from their bodies and from their feelings. So I invite people back into their bodies.
Beautiful.
This is what we live in. This container is how we get all of our information about life. I mean, the brain basically its entire life sits in the dark and makes up stuff. It makes up stories about the experiences that we had
Mm-hmm.
and judges them, evaluates them, puts them in a place. I mean, the brain is good for that,
Of
sorting and
course.
judging and
Yeah.
evaluating. But the body is where we have and store our experiences.
Yeah.
So to whatever extent we are closed to pleasure, to our life force, to our creativity. It's all the same energy.
Yeah.
Um, to whatever extent we're closed to that, to that extent, we're not going to live that part of our lives.
Yep.
People say, well, I want to be more fully present. What a great word, because when you are present, it's a
It's
present. You
yeah,
know, it's like
it is.
you're bringing people a gift. You know, people. I'm lucky enough to have some friends whose presence makes me happy.
Yeah,
You know, they're just so fully there.
yeah.
You can see it in their eyes. You can feel it in their energy. Um, so when people come to me, generally it's for some sort of dis-ease. You know, they're not, they don't know where they live in their bodies. They don't even know if they have one sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We're not a body positive society. You know, it's like unless you look a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way, and are below a certain age, you're good. But everybody else, not so much.
Yep.
So we deal with body image all the time, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
self judgment that comes along with it.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of us walking around who don't even feel or know that they deserve pleasure in their lives, no matter what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just something for an elite few. It's our birthright.
Yep.
If
And by
we
the
were
way,
not,
we got to remind everyone who we're talking to. Tell us your best forms of contact.
my name is Barry Carl.
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
My best forms of contact are email. I actually prefer that people contact me through my page on heal.me, heal.me. It's a site for alternative practitioners.
And can they just search your name?
They can search my
Perfect.
name.
Because I was
It'll
going to say it's a little too long if I do slash practitioner slash
no
Barry
no no
dash
no
Carl.
no no no.
Search for Barry Carl. Perfect.
Just Barry
Heal.me.
Carl. Right.
Perfect.
And my phone number is on there. I don't mind
Mm-hmm.
being contacted directly, either by phone or by text. I mean, most people are phone phobic these days, so it's usually a text.
Got
Uh,
it.
and
Perfect.
that number, can I give out the number?
Please.
Okay, it's 917-863-1950.
Perfect.
917-863-1950.
And it's barrycarl@gmail.com as well, right?
Right. And
Perfect.
that's all one word, BARRYCARL, not K, at
Got
gmail.com.
it. And so
Okay?
again, core energetics, somatic sex education, there's a lot that he has to offer. And I know we're talking today about the stigmatizing and legitimizing pleasure in a sense,
Yes.
and as a healing modality. We just have 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure we're getting to as much as we can during this first show. So please continue.
Great. Um, well, that might be it for that particular
Okay.
piece. I'd like to invite whoever's watching or listening right now to stay with us because we're going to be doing four more of
Yay.
these podcasts, and I'd like your feedback because there are certainly elements here that I'm interested in talking about, but I'd love to know what you're interested in. I'd love to know what questions you have about my work.
Yeah.
It's not exactly mainstream.
Hmm.
I'd love it to be. It's got a 2,500-year history.
Wow.
So, I mean, this isn't something new.
No.
There are writings by some of the early Greek philosophers and physicians about the importance of this work and the legitimacy that it has in our lives. Um, so maybe first shot out of the box here. how do you relate to pleasure? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, well, let's open up. If you guys want to email us, contact the station, let us know. We can talk about that next time for sure. But for me personally, pleasure is anything that feels good, smells good, sounds good, makes me happy, puts a smile on my face. I even have a
Yeah.
5 and 7-year-old, so there's pleasure getting them on the school bus now.
How
Pleasure,
wonderful. You had
pleasure,
that.
loving them, but also getting rid of them.
Did
Pleasure
you just have
is
that first day yay?
yesterday, yeah. And then I have a
Yeah.
kindergartner who got on the bus. So that is pleasurable
Oh,
because
oh.
yeah.
First
It's
day. That's real
yeah.
first
Oh,
day.
it was big. It was good.
Ooh,
But pleasure to me also is
congratulations.
just driving and being alone, listening to country music. We all have our forms of pleasure that we love.
That's true.
And it's so important because it does so much for our body, like you mentioned, the chemicals, the hormones, and how it rejuvenates us and just it makes us live a better life, right? Probably a longer life too. I'm sure there's studies about that.
There are.
Yeah,
There are.
yeah,
It's an often ignored and underused resource,
yeah.
pleasure,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
because we suspect it. I think that's a cultural thing.
Yep.
Uh, and because of COVID, we've somewhat deprioritized pleasure over the last couple of years because we've all been in survival mode,
Yep.
which only has three modes, fight, flee, and freeze. Uh, there's nothing in there about feeling good.
Yep.
All the blood and oxygen gets robbed from our brains and sent to our bodies so we can run away from the saber-toothed tiger. And there's nothing in there about feeling good. I mean, you might feel good when you're safe in your cave,
Yep.
uh, but that's a whole lot later.
Absolutely.
I,
Yeah.
I think we need to really consciously start bringing pleasure back into our lives because so many of us lost it over the last few years.
Yeah. Very true. I agree. And if someone does want to reach out to you to work with you for a consultation, unfortunately, Barry, we must go. Let's remind them again of the best form of contact and looking forward to the next few weeks that we speak for sure.
Likewise. Okay, the best forms of contact. Email barrycarl@gmail.com. That's my name, all small case, no spaces. BARRYCARL @gmail.com. Or call or text me at 917-863-1950.
Perfect. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much. Pleasure getting to know you and looking forward to our next few sessions together. You have a great day
You too,
and have a
Jill.
pleasurable week. And we'll be back next time as well.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.